Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod Barbecue. I am Mike Musto, along with Mr.
Hey, Dan
I mean,
Stoner.
Dan
Come on.
Stoner, the one,
Yeah.
the one and only.
Yeah.
This is a great episode. We've got a couple cool things. One is our very special guest. Our guest today is Miss Lynn Woodward. Now, for those that don't know Lynn is an automotive journalist. She writes for Kelley Blue Book. She's been a competitor in the Rebel Rally. She is a screenwriter, an off-road driver, a video host, and a child actor, which a lot of people don't know. She's also literally one of the nicest people on God's green earth. And just an amazing human being. So Lynn's going to be on in a few seconds, but before we get to that, as we always do, right?
Yeah.
We're going to take a little dive into our Hemmings Classified section, of which it is the largest classified section online and in print, with 25 to 30,000 cars at any given time online and 450,000 readers on print. Largest classifieds in the world. So as we do, we generally try to pick a car that I don't want to say resembles. That's a
Resembles. Almost pays homage to.
Pays
right?
homage to. Yes.
Yeah.
The guest that we have on.
Right.
And you guys could tell me at the end of this podcast if you think I hit the nail on the head if you listen to Lynn or not. But I think I got it pretty close. I've known Lynn for a while. For the car that we picked for her is a 1967 Jaguar E-Type fixed head coupe in this beautiful kind of powder blue. This is powerful, classy, elegant, sporty, right? Just beautiful, a stunning automobile. And, I was thinking about, I'm like, what would Lynn drive? Like, what would she get behind the wheel of? I think I kind of got it. So we're going to be running it by her. So when she comes on, we're going to say, do you like this car? And if she doesn't, then, well, I guess I just kind of shit the bed on this one.
Yeah. Well, then we just go back and do it all over again, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, this is, for those that don't know, I mean, Dan was talking about this before. It's like, this is a live podcast to an extent.
Right.
Like Dan and I are live. Well, until we're not. And then it goes back to recorded live.
Yeah. How does that work?
Then our producer, Ryan, he'll go back and fix everything we flubbed.
Yeah. Thank God. Yeah.
Anyway, so with that being said,
works. Yeah, it usually
works. Yeah.
Usually works.
So with that said, we are going to jump right now. I take a 5-second break, come back with Ms. Lynn Woodward, and get on with the show. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to our continuation of this episode of the Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast. I've got Dan Stoner with me, along with our wonderful, super wonderful guest, Lynn Woodward. How are you, Lynn?
Hi. Super wonderful. Now I feel like I have a lot to live up to.
That's a lot.
I do that all the time. I throw it out there. I will build everybody up. But I mean, in this case, there is no build up needed, right?
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, absolutely
it's nice
none.
To see you. We haven't seen each other in so long. So it's really, it's nice to see you, I suppose. Virtually.
Yeah, I know. It has been too long. So for those that don't know, like, you have done everything. You're with Kelley Blue Book. You competed in the Rebel Rally. You're a produced screenwriter, an automotive journalist, and a driver of everything off-road, a collector of some really cool old cars, and a child actor. Yeah,
child
actor. That's so crazy.
Wow.
But yeah. Honestly, it's been a really interesting journey to this point. And so anyone who ever asks me like, oh, how did you get into that? There's those people who are like, I knew I wanted to write about cars since I was knee high to a grasshopper. And I just started doing it, and I got this job of car driver, and I've been there for 30 years. And I was like, well, okay, well, that definitely was not me. And but it's been this really sort of wide and varied journey. And it's really interesting because I feel like almost every single thing that I've done has led up to where I am now, which I feel really fortunate that I get to do like what I do because I love what I do.
It's kind of a, we get this a lot. But yeah, we were just talking about this, but right prior to this, it is kind of that dream job, right? We go out and everybody goes, well, what do you do? And we're like, well, we drive cars for a living, not necessarily our own, but like other people's stuff. And then we go on video and we talk about them, or we
Yeah.
write about them, and then we podcast about it. And this is our job. I mean, people don't see the behind the scenes slog of the 18 and 20 hour days, but for the most part, it's a hell of a lot of fun.
It is. And, to your point, I think it is a lot of work. I mean,
Yeah.
I really started writing about the automotive industry only about 5 years ago. I've been a car fan and enthusiast and a love of driving since I was about 12 or 13, maybe younger. But I never had a community. And so I never really got to talk about it with people. It would just be something that I would sort of live out these like kind of car fantasies and dreams in my own head. But once I had a freelance job and an opportunity to work at the Enthusiast Network, which of course is the sort of what is now the Motor Trend.
Motor Trend. Yeah.
Who publishes Motor Trend and what used to be Automobile and Truck Trend and Hot Rod and all these like amazing publications, that I was really exposed to this group of other like-minded people. And I thought, oh man, it didn't even occur to me. I've been a writer for a long time, but it hadn't ever occurred to me. You can write about cars and you can make some money. I mean, it's no one's getting
rich off this,
but you can actually make a living doing this. And, for me, again, guys like you, Mike, who've just been in this business for so long, the learning curve is so unbelievably steep. And it's not just, oh, what's this model year all about? No, dude, you got to know what the 7 generations ago of that same car were. Not to even mention all of the marks that don't even exist anymore, like the history of the automotive industry. It's as soon as you feel like, oh, I've kind of got this nailed, like there's a whole other box that you get to open up. And so for me, it's been a tremendous amount of work. I got started kind of late in the game, but it's keeping me young. I'm going to say that. It keeps you on your toes. And I love learning new stuff. So for me, it's been a really, it's been a pretty cool experience so far. So.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I mean, I didn't get into the automotive game until I was in my mid to late 30s, and before that, I mean, I was a web designer and, at an investment bank for years upon years. And there wasn't and the stuff that we do right now didn't exist when I was in my early 30s. Like podcast didn't exist. YouTube video didn't exist. Right. So you didn't know there was an opportunity to have this as a career. And then you kind of get into it. And like Dan comes from the world of big advertising, and it's, Dan's career is pretty amazing. And the cool part is Dan is an encyclopedia of automotive knowledge. So anytime I'm like, who was this personality in 19, Dan's like, oh, that was this person. Why don't you know that? And I'm like, son of a bitch.
It's all, and then of course at Hemmings we always get schooled by everyone else who works at Hemmings too, and and just as soon as you say like, well, wait a minute, I don't think that year Citroen had the semaphores with the weird thing that stuck out, and there's someone else like, no, that's not really true because this year, and you will always, especially at Hemmings, find someone who actually knows a whole lot more than you do, and luckily we don't get in too many fist fights over that when we're all together at Hemmings. But that does happen as well.
Yeah,
it just shows you how much even people who've been around the industry for
that's right.
It shows you how many variations of one car there are, and now you magnify that by like the thousands and thousands of automakers. And I've been doing a lot of research. I've very fortunately been hired on another project to write a biography of a very early automotive racer, a woman, and back in the 1900s. I'm not really allowed to talk about it, so
okay.
Super secret. But I've had to do tons of research about brass era cars, and it's just like, it's like every guy on the block had like, oh, I'm going to try and make cars. You're just like, the volume of automakers, is absolutely astounding. So there's just layers and layers and layers and layers of knowledge. I'm amazed at those people who are like, no, that tail light was from the European version.
Yeah.
Of the car. And you're
Oh,
like,
it's crazy. Well, and you know the brass era. That's like we always compare the brass era to in the 19th to 20th century, much like the internet and the tech industry of the 19th or the 20th to 21st. Whereas like there's all these people doing all these things, making all these products, whether that's software or hardware, et cetera, et cetera. And that sooner or later, it's probably going to parse out to that you've got, you know, a handful or a cluster of big makers of whatever that thing is, right? Same thing with back then, turn of the 19th to 20th century. Like you just said, like there were so many automakers at one time trying out all kinds of stuff, and they were around for what, a year, 3 years, 4 years, you know. But the cars exist, and we've got a couple guys at Hemmings who are just brass era nerds, you know, and they know all that.
If you need any info on brass stuff, we are literally the authority. We can find you, and we have archives that go back 65 years.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I may give you a call. I actually did have an opportunity to go and talk to Jay Leno about some cars, because this woman, you know, drove a lot of steam cars, and I just really did not have any knowledge about steam cars. And he's got a bunch of his.
He's got the Stanley and some other things.
He's got a White. He's got a Stanley. I think he's got a Knox. I think he's got a bunch of them. And boy, it was really insightful and really helpful to be able to pick his brain about things and to physically. I mean, I don't know if you guys have driven a lot of those cars. I had a chance to drive a 1906 Maxwell, which is not a steam car. It's a gas combustion engine, but my gosh, like the strength that you need, the just like the physicality that you would need to drive these cars was, I mean, at one point I was braking and I had miscalculated the brakes, and we literally rolled into the middle of an intersection, and I was like, God, there's a huge like bulldozer car, like trucks, that's like right here, and I'm, you know, dressed in this like period costume with Emmy Hall next to me, and both of us are like eyes like this, going, oh God, we're gonna die, like this is amazing. And the guy just looked at us like, what the hell are you people doing? But man, I mean, just by the end of 2 hours of driving that car, your body is just like racked. I mean, I guess you wouldn't have known any better if that's all you drove back then, but still, I'm like, where's my zero gravity seats?
Well, think about it. I mean, we both have old car. Like all of us here have old stuff, right? Your Datsun. So for those that don't know, you've got what year is your Roadster? It's like a 66 or 67.
Yeah, it's a 66 Datsun 1600 Roadster.
Neat.
Okay, so it's basically the size of half a roller skate, and you know it's got to have what, 90 horsepower, 85 horsepower, something like that.
It's got like 96 horsepower in it, but I also just put in a 5-speed transmission in it. So
you're a maniac.
It goes. I mean, I probably could cruise it at 75 or 80 on the highway now, which is terrifying because, you know, there's barely a lap belt in it. So yeah,
but that's about as analog as you're going to get, right? I mean, we're talking no power steering, it doesn't have power brakes, does it? No power brakes. You know, we all have vehicles like that in our garages, so we're used to it. But going back and driving like a brass era car or pre-brass era, you know, steam cars or Model Ts, people don't understand that your hands are moving in 27 different directions just trying to keep the thing running.
Yeah. Oh, there's like an oil, like you have to, the oiling system, it's like a through system. So it doesn't collect the oil. It just kind of drips out like when it's cycling through the engine. And you're just like, okay, well, this is super environmentally all right. But you have to keep making the adjustments as you're driving.
Right.
And, you know, so it's just very rudimentary, but I love getting to see how everything has kind of evolved to where it is now. Yeah.
Well, now it's kind of insane. I mean, we're fortunate enough to drive new cars, right? And doing press cars and videos and things like that. The technology now, I honestly just look at new automobiles and I think they're magic, right? Like when somebody says, have you driven a Tesla? And they go, how does it work? I go, I don't know. It's magic. Like I just, I don't know. That's my standard. It's obviously magic because there's no moving parts. Everything is a solid state something or other. All I know is that I hit a button, everything lights up, I put my foot on the gas, and I go somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know how it works. I can't fix that. You know, I know how a carburetor works.
Yeah.
I can fix that.
Listen, all you need is
But
a computer now to fix cars. You know,
I
that's,
know.
that's all you need. I had this opportunity to write an article about female, like women mechanics, and why there just aren't that many women mechanics. This was probably, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I talked to one of the head of the I think it's Universal Technical Institute.
UTI.
Sure.
Their acronym is UTI. That is just
Yeah,
terrible.
that's not
Yes.
okay.
come on. I can't even say that with a straight face.
No.
So the woman who runs the person who runs it is a woman, and her executive team is half women. And I asked her in this interview, I said, why is it that there aren't more female mechanics? And she said, well, you know what? She said, the numbers are growing. A lot of women didn't want to get their hands dirty. I mean, that was literally the reason. But now everything is so computer based.
Yeah.
And it's going to be so much easier to be able to just plug in a computer and to be able to be like,
Yeah.
and then you're fixing it. Personally, I like the idea of pulling out a carburetor and trying to figure out how the puzzles work, how the
Yeah.
puzzle pieces work and what's wrong. I mean, listen, by the end of the day, when you're like, I have troubleshooted everything and I still can't find out what the problem is. But to me, there's a whole lot of satisfaction in that process, for sure.
Right. So let me ask you, before you started writing about cars, you said it was about 5 or 6 years ago that you started, you were a screenwriter, and I think you still do screenwriting, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
I do.
So how did that process start? And was that kind of almost like a gateway drug when you were like, I can write about cars? Like, how did that one thing morph into the other?
Yeah, well, I wanted to be a writer when I think I really realized it when I was probably like 14 or 15. And, I went to college and I thought, oh, I'll be a poet. And so I wrote a lot of poetry in college. And then by the time my senior year rolled around, I was like, where are you going to get that job? Like, oh, local poet needed. I'm like, this is stupid. So I decided I'd take a short fiction class. I just didn't know what it was that I wanted to write. And I had been in the, obviously in the entertainment industry when I was a kid, and just didn't kind of connect with the idea of, oh, well, maybe I could write those things too. I was a little slow, I guess. But I went to grad school, and I have a master's degree in short fiction. And, then I was like, well, gosh, now I have nothing to write about because I haven't lived any life. I haven't done anything. I've been a student. Sure. And so I left grad school and I got into advertising.
Dan?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right? But it seems so glamorous when you start because it's like, it's like this, like, you're, I don't know, maybe there are too many television shows about it, but I was in San Francisco at the time, and it was at the, right at the height of the .com, like, boom, where everyone is just like, money, money, money. And they're just throwing it at you. And so I worked in advertising for about 15 years, and it honestly tried to suck the life out of me and slowly kill me.
As it does.
As it does. But you know what? I got to experience a lot of things. I certainly got to understand what it was like for creative people to have non-creative people judging their work, which I thought was such an interesting dynamic. I learned a lot about
Dan.
Yeah, right? I mean, make the logo bigger.
I'm starting to have flashbacks. I feel like I got kicked in my lower spine, and all the acid is starting to flare up.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But it was a job that I think was a really good base of what was to, kind of come next. And the whole time I was just thinking, I was just an account executive. I wasn't writing copy. I was a suit, I was that guy. And I was just like, ugh, this is terrible. And I hate myself. And I think my last job, I ran the Hardee's fast food account. Oh, wow. And it was all like chicks in bathing suits eating burgers. And I was like, I'm not doing anything that's helping anybody here. No one needs to eat this stuff. Like, this is horrible. Right. And I decided somewhere along the line that I wanted to get into writing television, and I wanted to write comedy because I thought, well, I like laughing, and I sort of think I'm funny.
Yeah. All right.
It's
So
like
I
laughing.
I
Makes sense.
took a bunch of classes at UCLA Extension after I moved down here from San Francisco, and it all just kind of snowballed from there. I got a job working on this. I was the script, so I went from like this super high level account director position, and then I got a job at on a TV show. It was an animated kids show. I was the script coordinator, so I was like the lowest jackass on the totem pole. Totally. Like my boss would call me into his office and he'd hand me his lunch plate and he'd be like, go do something with this.
Oh man.
And I was like, I know exactly what I want to do with that thing.
Yeah. Mhm.
But you know, but I learned a lot about television, and I actually got to write a couple episodes of this terrible animated kids show that was like, it was called NFL Rush Zone, and it was this show that like tried to indoctrinate children into watching the NFL. It was awesome.
Wow.
Good.
Wait a society.
Good, right? Like we'd have to pull episodes sometimes because like the players that were in it would like do drugs or beat their wives. And
Oh my God.
like so bad. But I wrote a couple episodes for that show, and I teamed up with another writer, and she and I wrote some of those like sort of like, you know, Hallmark like Christmas movies, and like a thrillery, like stabby movie, which was sort of, you know, completely unwatchable. But man, just starting to be able to do that instead of be the person who's like, you need to make the logo bigger.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
Was really great until it all just, you realize like, oh my gosh, there's absolutely nothing steady or stable about the entertainment business. And, you know, I was broke and I had to kind of do some freelance jobs. And that's when I got the job at 10 at the Enthusiast.
Okay.
Wow.
And someone was like, hey, you should write about cars. And I was like, yeah.
I like cars.
And it just all kind of happened from there. So it was this weird, you know, this kind of really weird trajectory. I can't even remember what the question was.
You
answered it.
Yeah, were you like when they came to you with 10, you're like, I like to laugh. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and it was great. I met a lot of the guys in the truck group, like, you know, Sean Holman and Jason Gonderman, just awesome dudes. And I was like, hey, I have ideas. Like, I want to pitch some stories. And Gonderman was just like, I'll take whatever you have. Like, do this, go do this.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, this is awesome. And he's like, we need more women talking about trucks. We need more women doing off-road stuff. And I fell in love with trucks and with driving off-road. And that's kind of ballooned into this whole other thing for me too. So, you know, I mean, I have like up here, but the first story that ever made it into a magazine, into Truck Trend, ended up being a cover story for them. So, you know, I've just been
crazy,
so happy. But it's been a lot of work, you know, so.
Yeah. I don't think people realize the amount of work. And what I find is that, you know, perfect examples are yourself, myself, Stoner. Like we all come from these kind of corporate end backgrounds.
Mhm.
And it just, they do have a tendency to just beat you into the ground.
Yeah.
Until you get to that point where you go, fuck it, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're like, I like to play with cars for a living, or I like to write for a living, or I like to make people laugh for a living. And then you say, you know what, the hell with it. I'm going to ditch it. I'm going to jump in with both feet. I'm going to see what, if I fail, I fail. Like I failed at a lot of stuff, but, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
It's a huge leap of faith. I mean, I'm sure when you made that shift, like, you were like, okay, like, here I go. Like you have a family to support. I mean, that's terrifying.
Well, I mean, I don't have any kids. I just have 7 cars. That's my family. And myself, my wife, and our 7 cars.
That's right.
You
and a cat.
Have a family. You have a family.
And a cat. But yeah, and I remember quitting my job, you know, at Citibank back in the day, and I was doing really well. I was making a great living and everything else. And I remember taking the subway home from Lower Manhattan on my last day and walking out of the building with my boxes they give you, and you know, and going, what did I just do? I remember sitting on the 7 train going, oh, this could be really bad. But I mean, the one thing that being terrified does is it motivates you. Like having no money like
Yeah.
really makes you dig and take chances that you would never take when you're somewhat comfortable,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you adopt this kind of never, like my attitude was never say no. Like, do you want to do this? I was like, yep. You want to do this? Yep.
Yeah.
Want to do that? Yep. I still do that. I never say no to things because you never know what that experience is going to bring. And so, like you going from screenwriting and then going into cars, it's again, these are dream jobs. And I'm always fascinated to hear how people kind of got into this industry and then finding your niche. Like, so
Right.
you wrote for trucks, right? And I think a lot of us, like I went through 10 as well. Like I wrote for Hot Rod for years, and like my first cover for Hot Rod, I was like, oh my God, I write for Hot Rod magazine. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm like a 4-year-old boy in a really old man body. So it's an amazing thing. But so now you've done this, you've kind of carved out your niche for trucks. And you did the Rebelle Rally, and you're always wrenching on like Instagram. If you go to Lynn's Instagram, what is your Instagram account, by the way?
It's LYN and then 2 underscores and then Woodward, like Woodward and Bernstein.
Okay.
Nice.
So, and for you, for the young kids, just look that up on Google.
Yeah.
You'll figure out who that is.
Yeah.
Just do that. But Lynn is always like under a truck, or her hair's in 27 different directions, or like it's great. But you're always wrenching, driving, off-roading, doing something where everybody that looks at that is like, that looks kind of fun. Like I kind of want to do that. So talk about like the Rebelle Rally that you just did, and what gravitated you to playing in the dirt?
I've always loved being outside. I think, being in nature. I grew up in Los Angeles. There's all my stuff. I grew up in Los Angeles, and, there was always this kind of like desire to kind of get out and to explore, just because, being in a city. But yeah, I mean, being like going off-road and being an off-roader is just one of those things that, I don't know, sometimes you just connect with something and maybe you don't even know why. But I absolutely love, I just love driving those trucks. And, I got introduced to the Rebelle. I mean, I heard about it in the first year that it was a thing. It's only been around for 5 years. But for the second year, I got approached by Mike Guy, who was at the time the editor-in-chief of The Drive.
Sure. And Lynn, I apologize. Explain to everybody what the Rebelle Rally is.
So the Rebelle Rally it's a map and compass off-road navigation rally. They take away any GPS device that you have for an entire week. It's an 8-day event. And it starts at Nevada, like around Lake Tahoe area. And for 8 days, you're just basically like wandering through looking for checkpoints, about 150 checkpoints over 2,000 kilometers, all the way from Lake Tahoe down to the sand dunes in Glamis.
Wow.
Just outside of San Diego. And the woman who came up with this idea, Emily Miller, she used to race for Rod Hall, and she's, just absolutely a force. And she was like, you know what? We don't have anything like this in the United States, and women specifically don't really have an opportunity to do this. So I'm gonna make one. And everyone looked at her like, huh?
What?
And she did. I mean, she did everything that she had to do. She laid this amazing foundation, and 5 years in, it's an absolutely incredible event. And it really gives, women an opportunity to do something that is just absolutely unusual and completely extraordinary. So I kind of got sucked into it on assignment for The Drive. And, the first year was super rough. You have to have a teammate that you kind of, that you get along with. You're with a person for 24 hours a day. Like you're in the same tent as them camping. Like it's very intense, and absolutely exposes every weakness that you have. Right. And if you should choose to look at those, there's certainly a lot of growth and a lot of learning that can come out of it. There was unfortunately quite a bit of yelling the first year that I did it, and it was a difficult process. But you know what? I got a really important story told about it, I think, for other people who are interested in competing, because it was a very realistic I think just a very realistic interpretation of what this event and other events like it are like. This is difficult. It's not like ladies prancing around the desert doing yoga and whatever. This is hardcore stuff. And so I think I came in like 32nd out of 36 teams that first year that I did it. But I felt really accomplished because as an automotive journalist, I always felt like, oh, I don't belong here. Like I felt like a fraud. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing.
Sure.
When you off-road with press cars, there's always like an OEM representative sitting next to you.
Right.
Like, now you push this button. Okay, now we're going to put it into Ford Low.
Yeah.
And here's where we're going to do this. And they're telling you what to do. So I had absolutely like little or no confidence in my own skills. But when you're out there, like, you don't have anyone telling you like, okay, now's the time to engage that rear wire, dummy. And so for me, that was the accomplishment in and of itself. And then 2 years later, a woman who's been driving for Nissan, they've been putting trucks in ever since the whole thing started. Her teammate had just had a baby, and she's like, I need a teammate. And we really got along, and she's like, do this with me. And instantly I was like, yes, absolutely. Good. And the first year that we did it, we were in a modified 2008 Armada. You know,
like the big Mambo Armada?
Huge, massive, a huge
tank,
Armada, huge tank. It's like 6,500 pounds with all of our gear on it. But a kick-ass V8 engine. I mean, that thing was just absolutely like just a force. If you see, like, I think you just scrolled past one of the pictures of me. Yeah, that was us in it. But yeah, tried driving an Armada sand dunes, man. Like, it's not exactly light, but you know what? We had a great time, and you know, the car ended up being absolutely killer. We had a lift on it. We had huge tires on it. We had a bunch of other mods that were actually really helpful for us. But we ended up coming in 6th place, and we were pretty stoked about that. And then this year, COVID was like, oh, is it gonna happen? Is it not gonna happen? It was just this crazy thing. But Nissan was all for us doing it again in the Frontier that has the new V6 powertrain with the 9-speed automatic. And they were like, yeah, let's do this again. And Sedona, who's my teammate, we were like, okay, here we go. Let's do it again. And man, that little truck was so perfect. We ended up coming in 4th. We came super close to podium. We didn't quite make it this year, but yeah, it's just been this constant growth. And you know, I think the big lesson for me is, it's like, look, with anything, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what you love. If you put the work in, you'll see results. You may not be winning anything. You may not be like, you know, drinking milk out of a shoe. I don't know what Daniel Ricciardo drinks when he drinks out of his shoe. Right. But you know what? But you can at least set those goals for yourself, and you can and you really see improvement, and that's huge. That's so satisfying. So yeah, I'm hooked for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, especially with like the older SUVs, right? I know you've got your 2-door Montero, right? Yeah. And we recently had Jeff Glucker on the podcast, and Glucker's got a 4-door, right? And like I daily at 96 Bronco. So like I was like, we need to find all of the automotive journalists that have kind of these old school or older school SUVs and do some kind of romp into the desert with them, because there are so many people out there, and this drives me crazy. And we all know those journalists that live off press cars.
Oh, yeah.
And that really annoys me. I don't like that. And so I just think it would be really, I mean, Dan's got a 74 F250 that he drives daily. So like, I think we should do something. I think that we need to find our group of journalists with our own vehicles and go off-roading and do some kind of something.
I love it. I'm in.
I think I have to organize that. I think I need to organize that.
I got that little truck. You know, I have long been an admirer of those. Like, those were out around when I was in high school. Like, the Suzuki Samurai first came out when I was in high school, and I was like, oh, that just looks so, I had this huge list of cars that I wanted when I was in high school. And that was definitely one of them. And, you know, who doesn't want a 2-door G-Wagon or like a cool old Disco 2? But I can't afford those cars. I can't afford to maintain those cars. So the Montero was just like, to me, it just seemed like the natural choice. And it's so funny because both Glucker and I, this is sort of what we say anytime someone tries to poop on our Monteros, is be like, you know what? They are the most winning manufacturer at Dakar ever. So shut up.
Yeah.
And we're done.
That's good for back pocket.
That's great. I mean, you know, they really can't say anything because that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
100%
totally true.
is true. 100% is true.
Well, it's funny because growing up on the East Coast, like being a guy from New York City and Brooklyn and everything, I would like look at California as this mecca. Like I would always get the videos on videotape that you would buy, and it would be like people jumping dunes in Glamis or going down like, you know, at the dry lake beds. And I'm like, that can't be a real thing. Like that's not like, it was just like, it could have been on Mars from like sitting in my apartment in like, you know, Astoria, Queens. Right.
Yeah.
And so now moving out here and seeing like, this is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was like and especially like, and I'll throw this out there, like right now, this will air a little bit later, but for those that don't know, it just snowed in the Northeast. There's 87 feet of snow all over the rest of the country.
Yeah.
Like it's really nice outside here, and we can go to the desert if we want to today.
Yeah.
But Musto, we got to get you down to SoCal because you're up there. We need to get you down to Southern California.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. And you know, I am, like I said, I am 100% in. I have no problem like bombing off road. All my stuff I bought to beat the crap out of. That's why I own it. So, but I think, yes, we're going to have with Lynn after this, you and I are going to talk and we're going to get together like an off-road journalistic rally. Like, you know, that's all right. That's happening.
That idea. No press cars allowed.
No. And you have to own them. You can't borrow it from a friend. You got to own it.
Yes.
So,
yes.
All right.
Oh, I love that.
New rally.
That'll be fun.
New rally.
Like I'm
started it here.
That's right. I'm building a 2002 Suzuki XL7.
Ooh, okay.
I have two other buddies who have gone in on it, and we're turning that into an Overlander. So
okay.
It's so weird.
I like this.
It's such it's such an like a sort of an unsuspecting vehicle that you would do that with. You know, most people are like, oh, Tacoma or like a first gen, Tundra. But no, we're like, okay, we got this XL7 for less than $2,500, and we're doing it on the cheap. And yeah.
But I think that's the key, right? Is like presenting things to people that they might not think of. We try to do this a lot, is like, here's a list of 10 vehicles you can buy that will get you into the hobby that you can immediately have fun with.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right? That you don't have to. I think so many people are worried about putting on airs for other people and being like, well, I've got this Camaro or I've got this. It's like, man, go buy something cheap. Go buy the cheapest Jeep you could find or the cheapest whatever you could find.
Yeah.
If it runs, well, then just keep it running and modify it and have fun with it. And I think a lot of people stray away from that because they're just afraid to kind of take that plunge.
It is a lot of work, and you do have to kind of be resourceful. There's a picture up right now. Ours is the generation.
You have the before that.
One.
Yeah.
We have the older one.
But you got the old school.
But there is, here's the thing that I really like about the automotive community is it's such a community. And if you are interested in doing something, it does not take a lot of work to find someone who is of a like mind to you. And the great thing about car people, man, they just want to roll up their sleeves and help you. And if you are nice, and if you ask, and if you say, hey, I will pitch in and help you with your project. Could you help me do this thing over here? Then in my experience, 10 times out of 10, the answer to that is yes. And then you find all of these extraordinary people who have at least one thing in common with you. And to me, it has kind of opened up this whole new world to all these really cool and interesting people that I never would have met otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was funny. Somebody asked me once, they were like, if you have advice for anybody, what would you say? And I'm like, it's really easy. don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Like just be nice. Like it's not difficult. Just if somebody asks you something, like take the time to answer them. And like, I mean, unless they're being a dick to you, then feel free to be a dick to them. But like,
walk away because they're not worth your time anyway.
Right.
But I think that, what you've been doing is pretty impressive. And I think that it's a big inspiration for a lot of people out there that don't believe that there's, especially women that don't think that they can get into this hobby. And that's
it's tough. And I will say this, I mean, especially as a woman in this business, I feel like I've had to work twice as hard to earn my place here. I still have a lot to learn. I will be the first person who will say that. But you know what? I work really hard, and I want to know, and I want to get better. But it can be intimidating because there certainly are way more men than women. And I think there's that kind of, that fallacy that it's like, oh, well, if you like cars, then you're a mommy blogger. And by the way, who cares? Like, moms buy cars too.
Absolutely.
They need to know what they're getting into as well. So why wouldn't a mom write about what their experience is in a car for
That's
other
right.
moms? Like, and who cares? It's like,
right.
So I think for me, it's, you just have to kind of rip off the Band-Aid and kind of not be intimidated and just start. Cause definitely people have asked me like, oh, how did you start doing this? And I can remember when I was working at Motor Trend, and David Kennedy was the editor-in-chief of Hot Rod at the time. And I was like, man, I'd love to. I never thought I was smart enough to write articles. I don't know why that was. You're kind of like, oh, smart people are writers. Like, I'm not that smart. But I just thought, you know what? My mom had this Chevy Nova when I was growing up, and that's how she met my stepdad. And he's become one of the most influential and important people in my life. And I thought, wow, if not for that car, like, maybe they wouldn't have even got together. And I just thought, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to write a story about it. And I turned it into David, and he's like, look, if there were photos that went with this, I would publish it in a second. But you just have to do it. I mean, you just have to start, and you just have to do it. And it's easier said than done. And when you're done with a long day of work, the last thing you want to do is sit down and work some more. But that's kind of how you do it.
Yeah.
Or start a YouTube channel, or start a blog, or I think what you're doing is so great because, like you said, like, there are all of these different ways to do it. There is no one set way.
No, and I agree, and I think that years ago my dad told me something that was really important. He just said, if you think it's cool, somebody else is going to think it's cool. If you think it's fun, somebody else is going to think it's fun. So there's never, just because it might not be a very kind of outward thing and people don't recognize it there. If you like it, there are others who will like it. And it doesn't matter if that's, shoes or cars or airplanes or soda cans. It literally doesn't matter. Yeah. Right. And I think if you have the passion to sit down and put the work in, people will just gravitate to that.
Yeah.
And that's just a big thing. So what do you have going on right now? So what are you working on right now? What projects, aside from the biography that you're writing?
Yeah.
That you can't tell us about.
That you can't tell us about.
Yeah. I can't wait to talk about it. It's very cool. I'm having a blast. So my full-time gig is I work at Kelley Blue Book, like we kind of said earlier. And, I myself and one other person, Micah Musio, I don't know if you all know Micah Musio, but he and I both are responsible for doing all the video review. Did you see my cat?
Yeah. Yeah, she's been walking around in the background now for a half hour.
Yeah, she's been doing drive-bys for the last hour.
She has been. Well, she just went to the bathroom, so yay me.
Yeah, awesome.
So full time I do video reviews on new sheet metal for Kelley Blue Book, and our YouTube channel is full of all of the things that people drive these days, which is great because I certainly, like you, I love new cars. I think they're a lot of fun, and there's certainly all the technology that goes into them is like absolutely amazing and insane. I also just recently have had an opportunity to do some work with Barrett Jackson too. They reached out and they went from they're no longer on the Motor Trend channel, so they're with with A&E now, and I have no idea how they got my name. I have no idea how they called like through.
They saw your stuff and said she's kind of awesome. How do we get in touch with her?
Right,
that's what happened.
And they said, hey, we're looking for a floor reporter. Would you be interested in coming and doing this? And I said, hell yeah, I would love to do that. So they actually had their first live auction back in October in Scottsdale at the that big huge place where they do what's it called, the Westworld?
Westworld.
Yeah, Westworld.
And it was like full COVID things. I mean, we were on TV with like masks on our faces. It was like super weird. But yeah, 3 days of talking about auction cars, and my gosh, wow, that was like one of the coolest things ever to be able to do that. And they've asked me to come back for their next one whenever they're able to do that. And so I'm super excited about that too. It's so interesting. Again, we were talking earlier about how many different areas and how many different kinds of cars there are. Most of the Barrett Jackson cars that you see come up for auction are American muscle, right? I mean, that's just like kind of their bread and butter. That's not an area that I've done a lot of sort of work with, or, and I don't have a vast knowledge of those cars, but man, you do that and you like have to start figuring it out really
You learn
fast, like
real quick.
Hemi Cuda. Okay. Like figure that out, lady. Like talk to people.
Yep.
So that's been I mean, that was incredible. And they give you the whole sheet and they're like, okay, just pick cars that are interesting to you. And I was like, yeah, like I like all the weirdo cars apparently, because like all the ones that I picked weren't the ones that the two other people picked. That was really great. And I'm getting to do some stuff with Overland Journal. Just had a story come out with them about the Rebelle from last year, and I'm doing a couple of things with them starting off in the new year. So it's really great. I mean, I feel like I have all of these amazing opportunities. I have another story. Can I say the word Haggerty around you guys?
You can, of course. Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
But I do have another story coming out in the Haggerty's magazine about the first woman to drive across country in 1909. Her name was Alice Ramsey, and she was incredible. That's what I drove the Maxwell for, and
very cool.
1906. And so yeah, I have this amazing base of a job that's in new cars, but then I have these opportunities to kind of go off and look at classic cars, which, as you know, I absolutely love, and go and do off-roading and overlanding stuff, and still dip my toe into the film and television world. So it's just dreamy, man.
Not terrible. Not terrible at all.
Mike, we should get into this. This sounds interesting. We should get into this.
It seems like a good career. I kind of want to pursue it.
Yeah, we're sold.
Highly recommended.
Yeah, crazy.
I got to figure out a way to do this. Lynn, we'll talk after this.
You have to like sitting at a computer and writing, though. I mean, you really do. Because, wow, there's a lot of, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
People, I think that's what we're going back and talking about the whole writing aspect. And I think it was like 4 years ago, I had started to calculate up like articles that I'd written for print and online, and I stopped at 3,500.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's ridiculous. Yeah. Like that's, but that's what you do. And the problem is sometimes you crank them out so fast and for so many different outlets at a given time, somebody would be like, well, what did you write about? And like, literally it could have been yesterday. And you're going, oh, it had wheels, I think. Like it just blends. It just blends.
I mean, to me, there's this kind of this fairness and this balance that happens with everything in our universe, right? And so, yes, we do have this very unique opportunity when we are on a press launch to go to a really cool location, usually, and drive a pretty cool car, and maybe we're on a track, maybe we're in Portugal, maybe we're but listen, you also have to remember from the outside, it looks super glamorous, like advertising
Yeah.
did, right? Like advertising is amazing. But you know what? You get on a plane and you literally, when you land, you probably have to start driving like completely jet lagged and not crash a $100,000 car. Okay, that's not easy. The next day you're on a plane coming home, and by the time you land, you have to have written
That's right.
1,500 words that are coherent about why that is dynamically and interesting thinking. So you're like, oh God, like, okay,
Yeah.
sure I can do that. So that, you know, there's definitely, it's not just we jet set off and we drive
Right.
and we do a little thing on the grams about it.
Yeah.
There's so much more to it than that. And you know, so you really have to like sleep deprivation and exhaustion.
That's right.
As well
But
as
if you
riding in cars.
I think if you can get past that, I
Yeah.
will say, and I'm sure, you know, you guys will agree, it is a fantastic career.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
It is. And I think the thing that makes it so great is, again, the community that's here, the people, the other people that I've met doing this. Absolutely remarkable. Just really, just such a huge, like a broad swath of like really interesting folks. And no two are the same. Like no two will like the same stuff.
Yeah.
So,
That's-
okay, cool. Tell me, why do you like this? Oh, that's interesting. Or that's stupid. Like that.
Well, I'll tell you, we're coming on about an hour. So let me ask you this, Lynn. Where can people find you? We heard your Instagram, but give us everything in one good, concise sentence.
You can totally find me at Kelly Blue Book's YouTube channel. Go there and subscribe, and you'll see my face every Monday morning talking about a new car. You can find me on Instagram at LYN2_Woodward. And that's it. I don't Twitter. I Facebook, but that's just for my little tiny group of actual friends. And that's it. I don't want to be overexposed.
Gotcha.
Right. Smart.
Very smart. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for coming
Lynn,
on the
thanks
barbecue.
so much.
It's been so good.
This has been awesome. I've missed seeing your face, Musto. This is great. Thank you.
Miss you too. And listen, we will talk to you very soon, Lynn.
Look forward
and
to
we
it.
got, like, you and I are going to talk because we're going to set up that off-road rally.
Oh, it's happening.
Let's call it the empty beer can rally. I'm all in.
Love it.
Yeah.
In.
Sounds good. Yep. Done.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
See
you
you,
so
Lynn.
much, guys. Bye.
Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast and hit that subscribe button, and we'll come to you every week.